Okay, so Gilbert Ryle has already come up, and you use a quotation from Gilbert Ryle to illustrate your own view. John Doe's way, this is from Ryle's 1949 book, The Concept of Mind. John Doe's ways of finding out about John Doe, the same as John Doe's ways of finding out about Richard Roe. So why is that quotation appropriate?
Yeah, it's appropriate for a few reasons. I wanted to pay homage to Gilbert
Yes.
because so much of this is really owed. So much of this kind of view is owed to his seminal
Yes, I
work,
think
and
we're
I also think
both fans of Ryle in that respect.
yeah, and I'm a big fan of his writing as well. I think he's such a fun writer, and I think this sentence gives you a little taste of that. Just the rhythm of it and the rhyme, so to speak. It's appropriate to the theory because it's really just expressing the idea that there is no big asymmetry here between self-knowledge and other knowledge, at least not in method. I do think that there is an asymmetry. I think my access to my own mind is in many ways privileged. I do think I have better knowledge of my own mind than I have about yours, but not because I use a different method. And so just like John Doe can find out that Richard Roe is nervous by observing Richard Roe's hands sort of tremoring, John Doe can find that out about himself in the same way. He can, and indeed that's the main way he can find out is by looking and seeing that his hands are tremoring and so forth, and concluding that he's nervous.
Okay, so last question. As you say, your view isn't exactly that my ways of finding out about Alex Burns' mind are the same as Sarah Paul's ways of finding out about Alex Burns' mind. An important kind of evidence that I have, but you don't, is my mental imagery and inner speech. So mental images, to take your examples, of apples and silent utterances of lunchtime. And you also include my visual experience of a table at one point. So how do I know that I'm, on your view, that I'm visualizing an apple or having a visual experience of a table? So that seems to be some sort of residue of self-knowledge that your view doesn't account for.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And I don't offer a theory of that here, and I shouldn't pretend that I offer a theory of it anywhere. Maybe I can borrow yours. I think it's in some ways compatible with much of what I want to say. But let me say a couple of things here to make that consequence seem less bad than it might at first. So first, I think it's plausible, both kind of on just a priori grounds, but also scientific grounds, that sort of inner speech, talking to yourself, and experiencing mental imagery, images and sounds and so forth, that these phenomena are not like distinct and independent from our capacity to speak out loud and to have sensory experiences that are caused by external stimuli from our environment. In other words, like it's not a separate neural mechanism. Much more plausibly, it's the same neural basis, or in some ways sort of repurposing our capacity to speak out loud and our capacity to sense our environment in order to speak silently to ourselves and produce images that are not connected to our external environment directly. So if that's right, then, and if the main aim is really to kind of establish the symmetry claim that's kind of exemplified by the title, that look, it's the same thing in my own case as it is in the case of knowing about you, then I guess I think there's no special problem here, in the sense that, if we're already happy in thinking about knowledge of other minds to admit evidence on the basis of, speaking aloud and making observations about the other person, I mean, there is a question here how we have that evidence and how we know it, but I think inner speech and imagery are admissible on broadly the same ground. So I just want to say, look, at first, like, I know that you want an apple because I hear you say I want an apple, and I can hear myself say that as well, either out loud or silently. And I want to say that's broadly the same kind of evidence in both cases. So that's one thing. Now, how do I know about the imagery and visual experiences? I'm not sure, but I'm not convinced that I have to know these facts in order for them to serve as inputs into my theorizing. I'm certainly not convinced that I have to have a theory of how I know them in order to appeal to them in this way. At least in the sense that, I don't think I need to be able to rule out skepticism like about our ability to know these things before I can help myself to them in offering a theory of the things that I do try to explain, which are more complex attitudes and emotions and so forth. I don't know if your class is reading G.E. Moore, Proof of an External World, but I have in mind something.
Unfortunately, we're not.
Okay. So, well, anyway, I guess I want to say I can make theoretical progress by helping myself to these inputs into theorizing. And I don't think, not to deny that there's a philosophical puzzle here, but I don't think it's as pressing as the puzzle of how we know what we believe and desire and whether we're in love and so forth. Mainly because of the things I said in the first place about the principles and the kinds of cases that make them seem plausible. Like, it's really hard to get people to question their ability to know that they feel a pain or see a table. And again, I know, yeah, you've worked hard to get people to question this, but because this seems like such an obvious and easy thing to know about, whereas the other kinds of cases seem more difficult, I do think we make progress by helping ourselves to the first kind of case in order to explain the second. But it's fair to say that I haven't offered a complete and uniform account of all bits of self-knowledge. I've offered an account of some part of our self-knowledge in terms of maybe another part that remains to be explained by me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, I really appreciate it. I hope the students do.
Oh, it was my great pleasure. Yeah, and thanks for reading the paper.